Greeting from ACE Engineering College. Thank you for joining us. From this video onwards, we are starting a series in competitive programming. Irrespective of beginners or expert, if you want to master in competitive coding, you have to practice coding, coding and coding. I used to tell my students, unless you do not make your hands dirty with coding, you cannot get programming. Before I move forward and help you out the path of learning competitive coding, I would like to tell you why generally people freaks out when they see these competitive programming questions. I would like to explain you with an example here. Basically, if you take first standard student and teaches him basic fundamentals of mathematics and some formulas, and if you ask him to solve the engineering problem, so generally he freaks out even though he knows that concept, but he still thinks that he was unable to solve that problem, and he freaks out because he thinks that he is not capable of solving that problem. Similarly, in programming, okay, if you are at the beginner, like you're learning flow controls, you're learning loops and all, and you wanted to, when you see this competitive code, you freaks out and you think that you're not capable, you're not good enough to solve such kind of problems. Okay, the only problem here is not the approach and all. The only problem here is the gradually you have to move from level 0 to level 1 and level 2 and level 3. What is a common mistake we generally do? That we try to solve that problems directly, which we feel like, okay, no, it's very difficult, so we cannot solve it now. So moving for the solution, we will talk about why we exactly need competitive programming. Basically, competitive programming is when I can it is something different from your regular programming. In regular programming, what you do, you just type the code in the editor. Basically, you will concentrate on the problem solving skills, no doubt. But competitive programming is something different. So, competitive programming is actually a problem solving skill under a lot of constraints actually, where you need to think deeply and effectively. So, you need to make a best out of your code, okay. So, that is where the competitive coding comes in picture, and there are many constraints in competitive coding, and mostly the competitive coding relies on the time limit and the space it takes to solve your problem. So, basically competitive coding, you need to learn how to optimize your code, okay. So, moving ahead, if you take this example here, for example, this is one of the problem from the competitive coding, where they will tell you that you need to execute this code in 1.0 seconds for each input, and the memory limit is 256 MB. So, generally when you write code in your regular platform, you are never worried about the memory limit, okay, you never worried about the time limit. But this is a very common kind of errors you will get, other than you generally face errors like syntactical error or logical error or some runtime errors. But here the most of the people face the errors like time limit exceed error, memory limit error, okay. These are the very common errors in competitive coding. So, in this series we will be learning, okay. In a future series I am going to talk about in detail about this constraints, but basically today I will just talk about it. So, time limit is basically if they give that you have to solve in 1 second, then it means that you have to design your program in such a way that, okay, it should execute the instruction in 1 second, okay. The 1 second is not about your compilation time, it is about your execution time. So, meaning that when you execute your program, basically you know that a computer solves 10 power 8 or to 10 power 7 instructions in 1 second. But if you have, for example, if your algorithm or a code taking more time to execute your code, that is not going to help you out here, okay, and your code will end up with an error saying the time limit exceed. This is a very common problem with the students when they start their competitive coding in competitive platforms, that they will end up, even though their logic is correct, the code is correct, but still they will end up with this problem called time limit exceed problem. So, we will see that in our future series, that how to overcome that time limit exceed problem, Okay, we will see different approaches for solving this time limit exceed problem and all. But while competitive programming, this is one of the very important thing you have to keep in your mind, that you have to just think about space and time constraint. Let us talk about prerequisite for competitive programming. What you need to adapt this competitive programming. The first point here is when or where to begin. I strongly recommend that you should start competitive coding in your first year itself, because there are a lot of coders, okay, who have good ranks in a lot of competitive platforms. They start their coding in the schooling itself. So I just recommend you all that start this competitive coding from first year in onwards, because it is very much different from your regular coding. So, and where to begin? Basically, there are a lot of online platforms, like you have HackerRank, you have HackerEarth, you have CodeChef, you have CodeForce, you have Sponge. So, there are a lot of online judges are there where you actually start working on competitive coding. The best thing about this competitive platform is that you will understand different kinds of errors, what I mentioned, that time limit exceed or memory limit exceed or runtime errors, and you will also see that you will understand about public test cases and private test cases, because in regular problem solving you never are worried about the test cases. You just see your output is coming, whether it is logically correct or whatever, you just go ahead. But in this competitive coding, if you are making any of the mistake, then you will be gone. So, basically in competitive coding, it is not about the errors, it is also about optimizing of your code, so that people can see that how good you are in coding basically. The second point here will be picking a programming language. This is very important step. Basically an idle language is one which gives you the time and space constraint. Two of the programming languages, C and C++, is considered as a best programming language for competitive coding, but I personally prefer, especially for computer science and IT engineers, I prefer to go with C++ as your choice of competitive programming, because they are very close to computer and they take very less time, very less execution time when compared to other programming languages. And no doubt, I hope everybody agree that C++ will be the more appropriate because of the standard timelet libraries they have, that makes your life easy. Python may not be the good choice here, but for non-CSE and IT people, I can recommend you to go with Python programming language, because it is no doubt it is very easy and a lot of built-in functions and a lot of beautiful data structures are available to help you out to solve competitive coding. But we cannot deny that as it is an interpreted programming language, so the performance wise it is little slow. If C takes a second to solve the problem, same Java will take 2 to 3 seconds to solve the same problem, and Python may take 5 to 6 seconds to solve that particular problem. But still many people still prefer to go with Python, but Python may not be the more appropriate for competitive coding. Then I will recommend you to start with basic problems. You may not realize the importance of basic problems, but when you frequently solve these problems, you will realize that you are actually making it much optimized, and I will recommend that for each topic. Like if you talk about arrays, I would recommend you to solve minimum 100 problems on arrays and 100 problems on flow control, 100 problems on loop construct and other construct as well. So, you need to practice more number of problems into this particular area. Then learn data structures and algorithm. So, for complex problems, you cannot just convert the program in the problem statement into a code directly. You need the help of data structures and algorithm. For spatially optimizing, there are a lot of algorithms and data structures you generally be using, like stack data structure is very useful for code optimization. Your dynamic programming, okay, backtracking, all these strategies will help you to optimize your code. In further series, we will be learning that how to optimize this code using these strategies. Data structures and algorithm is the best friend for yours in competitive coding. Not only in competitive coding, even for your interviews, data structures and algorithm is considered to be your best friend, and one need to be master in data structures and algorithm to crack competitive coding. Next, competitions define us. So, you need to participate into different competitions like Infosys conducts Hack with Infi, even Google conducts its Kickstart competition, IBM conducts its competition. Not only that, you even this the coding platforms I mentioned, CodeChef, Code Force and all, they used to conduct daily and weekly or monthly competitions. I will strongly recommend that you participate in the competition, because not only you get real time exposure, you will also get the good prize as well. So, finally, you should not give up, you should be very confident for solving this competitive coding. Thank you.